airports are an absolute mess. Houston, New York, Atlanta, all the major travel hubs. And why are they a mess? Well, you can thank Congress for that. TSA has been working with no pay, and that's because Department of Homeland Security, which oversees TSA, is shut down. No funding, nilch, zero. It's been 34 days. This has been going on for 34 days, and the entire time, guess who is collecting a paycheck? Congress. It's really deplorable what Congress has failed to do, but I have an idea. And I bet President Trump will like my idea. I'll tell you what the idea is in a few moments. Pennsylvania Democratic Senator John Fetterman, he's his own man, sometimes breaking ranks with his Democratic colleagues. Some of those issues include keeping the government funded, confirming President Trump's nominee to lead the Department of Homeland Security, and U.S. strikes on Iran. Pennsylvania Senator John Fetterman joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And you are your old man. Nobody tells you what to say or do. That's what I've concluded watching you. So tell me what you think about what's going on with TSA.
Well, what's happening? And I talk to them. I mean, I'm at the airport, virtually every week of the year. And I ask them, it's like, hey, do you like getting paid? Yeah, I do. And I would remind all of your viewers that they make around $50,000 a year. So that is solid middle class. Can you imagine going for weeks without a paycheck? It is, for me as a Democrat, you are violating a kind of a core value of hurting the the middle class. And now, just earlier this weekend, I was the only Democrat through this entire thing to refuse to shut our government down. This is wrong. Now, you can want to reform ICE. That's reasonable. But it has no impact on that directly. It has nothing to do with that. You are only doing is you're punishing things, and on even more sinister things, more than even just like to see the kinds of lines that you see in the airport. Now, look what happened in Michigan. You had an individual with a connection, with Hezbollah. He come driving into the synagogue in Michigan, looking to kill 150 toddlers there. So with all the kinds of security, not just TSA, all of DHS is shut down and that. So that also our cybersecurity agency, that's another part of it. Now, the two premier kinds of nations that use those tools, that's China and Iran, and right now too. Why are we keeping this closed? For me, the Democrats are just are afraid of their base to just tell them, hey, we're going to do the right thing. We're going to reopen this. And now I want to, and I will work for the new Secretary Mullen. That's why I voted for him. We agree on many things about our homeland security. So I know I've been taking some heat from voting for him. But again, he's a good guy, and he's someone that I can work with. And now why? Let's just reopen DHS, pay everybody, stop all these lines, and make our nation more secure. And now that's why I worked for him and I voted for him. That's why we should be here.
What are your constituents saying to you?
Well, I haven't been back in Pennsylvania since this, Mullen thing. But before that, everything's mostly very, very positive overall. So for me, do you think people should be paid for their work? Yeah. And, when I meet someone that says it's not a big deal, because that would be the first time. And you pointed out now, I'm getting paid and everyone here in the Senate and Congress is getting paid. How can you say you don't deserve your paycheck? I do, but not me. Especially when what you're doing is not going to force or create the kinds of changes that as Democrats, would like to see in ICE. Who could help make those changes? Working with Senator Mullen, and I will, to make these appropriate changes for ICE. And now I was the only Democrat. I put that on my social media, on X, just celebrated. Now, the borders, the encounters are down to record low. That's down around 90% that it was during the last administration. That's true chaos there. So focusing on keeping that secure as they've done. And now let's just round up and deport all the criminals. And now we can have no more tragedies like in Minneapolis. That's what I signed on. That's why I was the deciding vote now, and I support Senator Mullen.
You know, I've got a theory that Senator Schumer, the minority leader, first of all, I have a theory he doesn't have any television sets in his office, so he doesn't see all the airports, because we're all putting it on the airports, what's going on for the Americans. It's for the travelers, for TSA. And also, he doesn't fly to New York. He probably takes Amtrak, so he doesn't have to stand in those long lines. I can't imagine that he's not getting heckled when he's out in public. Like, you know, work something out, you know, make it work, because we're waiting. This is an accident waiting to happen.
All I can say, I'm one vote, and you can just confirm. It's just that vote just closed just before I came on here with you. It's like I was the only Democrat. That's crazy. You know, if you know this, what we're doing, what we're punishing, and this chaos will not create any kinds of the reforms on ICE. Why keep doing this thing? Why can't you just admit this? Look, you know, I wanted Noam gone. She is gone. And now let's just dump on Mullen. Now why not find a way to work with him and make the kinds of reforms? You want to really have reforms? Yeah, let's work with him. Let's do that. You know, let's reopen everything. Now let's just start with a hard reset.
If I assume that Mullen, since he made it out of the committee, I assume that when it goes to the floor, he's going to get confirmed. Will his confirmation make any dent or any progress in funding DHS so that the TSA people are getting paid? Will that make any difference?
I sure hope so. You know, he and I have had multiple conversations, and he agrees with that. We want this to be resolved. You know, he's already acknowledged that there's some changes he want to make. One of the most profound things he said is like, I want to keep DHS and things out of the headline, especially for things like that. You know, that's the right kind of attitude. And I want to point out to this picture that's on your screen. You know, right here behind him, that's Sean O'Brien. You know, that's the president of the Teamsters. You might remember, you know, they almost came to blows last year, you know, and now they're good friends. And O'Brien was sitting right behind him to support him. You know, like, that's really a powerful testament. And, you know, and that's why I encouraged my colleague from Kentucky, let's just let go some of this hard feelings. You know, that's part of what's necessary now. We can have different opinions, but why can't we just work together? And it's not helping anybody to see all those Americans in those long lines, except just missing their plane. But TASM members are not able to just pay their own bills.
And Senator John Fetterman from the great state of Pennsylvania, thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.
And Iran has some new claims, yet Iran has no evidence to back up their new claims. The first claim, it comes from Iran's Supreme Leader, Mojtaba Khamenei. He says Iran's economy is resilient. Mojtaba also says the enemy, which of course would be the United States and Israel, has been defeated. But those statements did not come from Mojtaba himself. Instead, for the second time in 8 days, an Iranian TV anchor read the message that is supposedly from him. But the big question, is Mojtaba even alive? If he is not, is he gravely hurt? Who's running Iran? Here's another claim today from Iran with no evidence to back it up. The regime claims it is still building missiles. Is that true? Any evidence proving that? U.S. and Israeli officials, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, have said that Iran can no longer build missiles. Here's what President Trump said moments ago while departing the White House.
Well, look, we can have dialogue, but I don't want to do a ceasefire. You know, you don't do a ceasefire when you're literally obliterating the other side.
Senior correspondent John Huddy is live in Tel Aviv, where it is 10:08 p.m. John?
Yeah, Greta, well, Iran may not be building ballistic missiles, but they are still firing them. In fact, we just had an air siren go off maybe about 15 minutes ago, and then I heard the sound of what sounded like interceptions in the distance, and that has been happening throughout the day. It was very quiet overnight, early this morning, but right around 8 a.m., sirens started sounding. We had about 6 missile salvos, including one missile that was intercepted over the Jerusalem region, dropping fragments, missile fragments down on the old city of Jerusalem. Some of these projectiles landing within 350 meters of the Temple Mount, which is one of the holiest sites in both Islam and Judaism. And these attacks happening after, of course, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's remarks Thursday night saying Iran no longer has the ability to enrich uranium nor manufacture ballistic missiles. And the Prime Minister during those comments talked about the difference between the ongoing operation now and the 12-day war last summer. Here's in part what he said last night. Listen.
In Rising Line, we destroyed missiles and we destroyed a lot of the nuclear infrastructure. But what we're destroying now are the factories that produce the components to make these missiles and to make the nuclear weapons that they're trying to produce. We're wiping out their industrial base in a way that we didn't do before.
Yeah, and that's a key point. And granted, before the operation, Iran had an estimated 2,500 ballistic missiles in their arsenal. And IDF officials told me this week they're trying to double that amount, if not more so. Iran had fired so far an estimated 300 missiles at Israel and counting. But the IDF estimates that about 70% of Iran's ballistic missile launching capabilities have been either destroyed or severely disabled. And thanks to Israel's multi-layered missile defense systems, from the David Sling to the Arrow 2, Arrow 3. We saw one of those Arrow 2 batteries earlier in the week. The IDF says an estimated 85 to 95% of Iranian ballistic missiles have been intercepted. Still, though, having said that, Iran does have ballistic missiles, and they are continuing to fire them, particularly with the warheads loaded with cluster munitions. And these cluster munitions are able to evade those Israeli intercept systems because they're dispersed from the warhead before that missile is actually intercepted. And we're seeing the results of that, not only the damage, but several deaths this week here in Israel. 3 Palestinian women were killed near the West Bank city of Hebron on Thursday as well, the first Palestinian deaths in this ongoing war. And the IRGC spokesman, General Mohammad Naimi, was quoted by Iranian press on Friday saying that Iran would continue to not only manufacture but fire ballistic missiles at both Israel and also American forces in the Middle East. Well, just today, Greta, the IDF confirmed that general, along with other senior IRGC intelligence commanders were all, quote, eliminated. Greta.
John Huddy in Tel Aviv, thank you. Coming up, how much worse do our airports need to get before Congress does something? It is their job. If you don't do your job, you would get fired. Texas Senator Ted Cruz joins me when the record continues.
Hey, my man, we're asking people what happened to global warming.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I think it's a facade. I think it's fake.
They used to talk about global warming a lot. This is the coldest I think I've ever felt in my life these last 5-6 days.
It's definitely been a lot colder than I remember growing up as a child.
Are you Newsmax?
Yes, ma'am.
My dad is a World War II veteran. He fought in World War II. He's 101. He watches your show in Arizona all the time.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dried premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Get new floors during Empire Today's gigantic 75% off sale. That's carpet, hardwood, tile, and vinyl. 75% off. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire. Instagram teen accounts with automatic protections.
Bad news, Bulldogs. Sidelined for the season.
Limits on who can contact teens.
Ouch! How are we gonna win without you?
And content settings now inspired by 13+ movie ratings.
Hey, Slater, we're gonna win this one for you, bud.
You up for this?
Instagram teen accounts with automatic protections.
You moved in. You nested.
Hey, what are you doing?
You partied. You cuddled. You made egg rolls. You slept in. Or tried to. And you kept growing. Now it's time for the next chapter. With Open Door, get an all-cash offer for your home in 24 hours. Because saying goodbye should be the hardest part. Move into your future with Open Door.
I have an idea. I get it. Congress can't do its job, can't get it together to figure out how to work together and how to fund our government, meaning DHS and thus TSA. Congress, in exposing its gross dysfunction, appears to be content to put all travelers at risk. It is possible that weary, overworked, overstressed TSA workers might miss that dangerous weapon or dangerous person getting on a plane. And you know what could happen next. But it's not just safety, and that is serious. It's just plain old decency. Congress appears to be content to starve our TSA workers. Many TSA employees live paycheck to paycheck to feed their families, and now they're not getting that paycheck. So here's my idea. It won't take much effort, and I hope Congress can at least agree on this one. Congress, House and the Senate, should first thing Monday morning go to the floor, pass a bill providing for a substantial bonus to each TSA employee who stayed on the job through this disgraceful time, while Congress continues its obscene behavior of fighting with each other over something that really matters to the American people and to our TSA. I bet if Congress passed this bill on Monday, President Trump would sign it by the end of the day. As for what is substantial, I suggest $30,000 each for each TSA employee who shows up at work, and make that tax-free. Meanwhile, here's another idea, not mine, but that of Texas Republican Senator John Cornyn. He's introducing a bill that would end special treatment for members of Congress at airports. Members of Congress would not be able to cut the line anymore and go to the front. They would have to go to the airport 4 hours early like the rest of the travelers to get through TSA. If recognized, they'll probably get an earful from the passengers standing with them for hours. Consider it constituent outreach. Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz joins me. Nice to see you, sir. What were you do about TSA? What were you do about TSA not getting paid?
Look, we need to fund them, and we need to fund them now. I just heard a minute ago what you said. I would respectfully suggest that your remarks should be edited slightly. I agree with every sentiment you said except one. You said Congress isn't paying them, Congress isn't paying them, Congress isn't paying them. To be accurate, what you should say is Democrats aren't paying them, because Republicans have now voted 6 consecutive times. I voted 2 hours ago to fund the entire Department of Homeland Security. I voted over and over and over again. Why are they not funded? There is only one reason. Because the Democrats, on a party line vote, are refusing to fund the Department of Homeland Security. It takes 60 votes to pass the funding legislation. We only have 53 Republicans. So saying Congress is not doing its job is inaccurate. The Republicans, we are here, we are voting, and the reason this shutdown is happening is because Chuck Schumer and the Democrats care more about the radical open border extremists than they do about doing their job, and it's resulting in a lot of people hurting right now.
All right, I considered saying that, but I'll tell you why I didn't. Because part of the job, being a Republican or a Democrat in a Congress, is you've got to figure out a way to resolve things with your opposition. It can't just be that they're obnoxious or they're obstinate. There's got to be some way to get them to do that. That's just part of the job. And it's, of course you're going to run into these walls a lot. There's got to be something to be done. You can't just let these people starve.
Greta, you're assuming that the two parties are reasonable. The Democrats want a shutdown, and I'll tell you candidly, I think they're happy to shut down the Department of Homeland Security for the rest of the year. We had just a week ago, Brian Schatz, who's considered the Democrat leader in waiting. He told a reporter, he said, "We are serene." That's the word he used, serene about the DHS shutdown. And mind you, we have had 4 terror attacks from radical Islamic terrorists in the last 2 weeks. We have a heightened risk of terror attacks right now, and the Democrats keep voting to defund the agency that is designed to prevent terror attacks. It is reckless and irresponsible. From the Republican side, do you know that for 2.5 weeks, the Democrats refused even to sit down and talk with the White House? They just voted no, 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 and their position is, we won't talk to you. We're not interested in a compromise. Our answer is no. Shut it down. We don't care. It is not, this is the equivalent of political terrorism. And by the way, Greta, if you look to the last shutdown was right before the election last year. It was the Schumer shutdown. It was 43 days. It was the longest shutdown in American history. Do you know what one Democrat aide told a reporter during that shutdown? That Democrat aide said, "We will keep the government shut down until airplanes begin falling from the skies." Look, that is wildly irresponsible and reckless. And you know why they get away with it? They get away with it because they're confident that the press will do, Greta, with respect, what you just did. Well, it's Congress who's doing it. No, it is not.
No, I mean,
Republicans are voting to fund it, and Democrats are voting not to. And the reason Democrats keep doing this is because they don't get held to account. If I vote against funding, hold me to account. But when they're the ones shutting it down, we need to be very clear telling the American people it is Chuck Schumer and the Democrats. The White House has given them a ton. Have you seen what the White House has given them?
Yeah,
yes.
No, but is there anything more? Because this is the time. I'll tell you what's going to happen. I'll tell you, all you members of Congress are going to have to stand in line, Democrats and Republican. You're going to stand in line TSA like the rest of us, and you're going to get heckled. You're going to hear from constituents, and it's going to be rugged. It's going to be rough. Look, these airports, because the passengers are not getting happier.
Greta, whose fault is it that TSA agents are not getting paid?
I think it's a Democrat's fault. However, I do think the challenge for Republicans is to figure out how to get it done, even if the Democrats are doing this to you.
Okay. So can I answer you? The president and the White House have made multiple concessions to the Democrats. Nothing is good enough. And here's the problem. Okay, one of the stupidities of this. The Democrats have decided they hate ICE, and they want to defund ICE in its entirety. That's their demand. There's no way Republicans are going to agree to defund ICE. That is, we do not support the open borders of the Democrats the last 4 years.
Could you carve that debate out on ICE and instead just separately fund TSA? Is that possible?
So just never fund ICE again, just have open borders forever? That's what you're saying President Trump should do?
No.
But what happens then? You carve ICE out and then let them be... you're doing a good job lobbying for Chuck Schumer right now, but how is it responsible to say we're not going to arrest murderers, gangbangers, and child rapists? Is that what you're suggesting we say?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm trying to figure out, is there any way around this? Is there any creative way around this? Because this is a crisis in the country.
It is absolutely a crisis. I agree. And let me say, those TSA agents, they are heroes. We've had over 300 TSA agents quit. They've missed 2 paychecks in a row. Most of these men and women are living paycheck to paycheck. They got to pay their rent. They got to feed their kids. We're going to see hundreds more quit. We're going to see airports starting to be shut down. And what the Democrats are doing is wildly irresponsible. I'll tell you, I stood up in the Republican conference yesterday and I said, these Democrats are so unreasonable that they would force a shutdown for the rest of the year, and they don't care if it results in terror attacks. They don't care if families can't go on spring break. What I'm urging my colleagues to do is we ought to take up a second reconciliation bill and fund all of this with just Republicans, because the Democrats holding the American people hostage is irresponsible. But I'm going to, I hope we do that, but I'm going to make a request of you, Greta, I'm going to make a request of you, which is to report the news accurately, that when it is Democrats who vote, do not fund TSA, do not fund TSA, do not fund TSA, then be very explicit, it is Democrats who are forcing the shutdown. When that doesn't get reported accurately, they don't feel the heat.
Except that you've just given a solution to a reconciliation. Then you don't need the Democrats. So why not do that?
That's what I'm arguing. By the way, that takes some time to do. I am making that case emphatically to my colleagues. I'm the one leading the fight to do that. We haven't done it yet, but the more the Democrats dig in, the more by the way, that takes at a minimum several weeks, so it doesn't solve the problem of the delays at the airport right now. But my point is, and you're not the only one, almost every TV station reports that it's Congress that hasn't funded it. Most people don't know that Chuck Schumer and the Democrats are voting against funding over and over and over again.
Listen to me for a second. I know what the Democrats have done on this, but the fact that there is a solution, which you just laid out.
Then tell your viewers.
I just did, reconciliation, but I wish you'd started it 6 weeks ago because of this problem. So start it today. Do it something. There is a solution. That's my problem, that there is a solution. Use up your reconciliation option to do that. I'm all in favor of that.
Well, you are now repeating the argument that I made emphatically twice this week at lunch to my colleagues. But as one individual senator, I don't have the ability to control the votes of everyone else.
Well, then we do go back to having it's not just the Democrats, because the Republicans have a solution, but you can't get your Republicans to move to go on to do reconciliation, which would solve it, which would work around the obstinates of the Democrats.
If that becomes your talking point, you know what that reporting on that will do? It'll extend the shutdown, because the Democrats, remember, the Democrats are saying, we feel serene. No one's mad at us. In fact, they're blaming the Republicans because reporters say it's Congress, it's Congress. That is not honest reporting. It is the Democrats who are voting no 6 times.
I'll tell you what's honest reporting. The Democrats are blocking it, and you have a tool, reconciliation, to go around it. Those are facts, right?
Okay. That's fair, and I'm arguing we should use that tool because I think these Democrats are wildly unreasonable, and they're never going to come to the table and say yes. I have some of my Republican colleagues who keep hoping maybe the Democrats will cut a deal. I'm telling them these guys are so captive to their angry open border base, there is no deal that they will say yes to. That's where I believe the Democrats are. I think they would leave it shut down for a year.
All right, can I ask one quick question? And I appreciate, even though we're locking horns a little bit, we're really not locking horns. I think we probably really agree on these things.
You and I know each other a long time.
I know. What about my idea about giving these poor people some sort of bonus? You know, at least put something out there for them, the TSA.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I will say, when the Schumer shutdown happened last year, 43 days, you had TSA agents who came into work even though they weren't getting paid. You also had air traffic controllers during the Schumer shutdown who came into work when they weren't getting paid. The Trump administration did what you suggested. It gave them $10,000 bonuses for the ones who came in. I think that was a great idea. It was the right thing to do.
I say 30.
I agree with you. They should get a significant bonus. But by the way, can I mention another solution to this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Which
I'm looking
is
for solutions.
during the Schumer shutdown. During the Schumer shutdown, Ron Johnson, my colleague, Republican from Wisconsin, introduced a bill called the Shutdown Fairness Act.
The great state of Wisconsin.
That said any federal worker who has to come into work during a shutdown because they're an essential worker, and TSA workers are essential workers, will get their paycheck, that it's not fair to make someone work without getting their paycheck. Now, understand, every single Republican supported that bill, and the Democrats opposed it. By the way, you know who also supports that bill? The Teamsters Union, the Union of Government Employees, all of the unions support it, but the Democrats, given a choice between do you support government workers to get their paycheck or do you side with the radical open border activists, all of the Democrats are putting the open border activists above the salaries of the government workers. We could avoid this problem going forward if we passed the Shutdown Fairness Act, but what needs to happen is the press needs to hold Democrats accountable so that when a Democrat goes on this show and other shows, they get asked, why won't you vote to send a paycheck to government workers who are being forced to work?
I will ask that. I'm also now a big reconciliation fan after talking to you on this. Anyway, Senator Ted Cruz, always nice to see you, sir. Nice to see you. And we'll be right back.
Every day across the globe, big business agendas go unseen by investors. Things that go against your core values and beliefs. It's time to know your investments. Abortion, alternative lifestyles, gender and identity confusion. If you believe in protecting marriage and life, children, innocence, guarding masculinity, restoring families, defending religious liberty. Invest with your values. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Kibble. It's been the standard for decades, and it's failing our dogs. That's why we created Badlands Ranch Superfood Complete. It's gently air-dried, locking in the nutrients, and the flavor dogs go wild for. Visit your local pet food retailer today.
I wish I could just watch live sports at home.
Oh, Sling let you do that.
I wish I could watch live sports at home at a low price.
Sling let you do that. Sling let you do that.
Yeah, well, I wish I could watch live sports and pause my subscription when my team sucks and still get hundreds of channels for free.
Sling lets you do that.
Choose and customize your channel lineup or pause and watch for free. Sling lets you do that. Base package required.
What if you're sick at home or traveling and can't get medical help or prescriptions? Doctors say a medical emergency kit is the answer. Joining me is Dr. Drew.
Thank you. And yes, these kits put you in charge of your health. They come with physician-prescribed medication to treat multiple common and some serious issues as well.
What are some examples?
Sure. Generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other essential antibiotics and antivirals that treat flu, pneumonia, strep, ear infections, sinus infections, urinary tract infections, and more.
So it is like urgent care and a pharmacy at home?
Exactly. No waiting, no pharmacy, no copays. You feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
How do you know what medicines to take?
You just match your symptoms to the doctor-written guide or schedule a quick telehealth call.
Sound advice. Order online in minutes at the website below and save $45. Thank you, doctor.
Visit urgentcarekit.com/news, promo code news.
Millions of Americans rely on a statin to reduce cholesterol, but statins can deplete CoQ10 levels. I recommend Cunol CoQ10 with 3 times better absorption and the #1 cardiologist recommended form. It helps replenish what statins deplete. Cunol, the brand I trust.
Hey, that's great.
You know the rule. No phones at the dinner table.
I know, I'm sorry. It's just Noble Gold Investments. I bought some gold for the kids.
Finally.
Well, the gold you bought me gives me so much security in this economic disaster we're having. I want that for them too.
Well, I've been investing with Noble Gold Investments for years, and I'm pretty sure they can wait until after lunch.
Invest in something you can hold. Invest in Noble Gold. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com to learn more.
How is Russia reacting to the biggest political prisoner release in U.S. history? Yesterday, I reported right here on this news show the Trump administration brokered the release of 250 political prisoners from Belarus. My husband, John Cole, who is President Trump's special envoy to Belarus, was in Belarus and negotiated the political prisoner release with Belarus's President Alexander Lukashenko. So this now brings John's total number of negotiated political prisoners from Belarus in less than a year to 500. So how is Russia responding to this news? Foreign correspondent Shelby Wilder has the latest. Shelby.
Yeah, hi, Greta. Well, last month, Russia's Foreign Intelligence Service released a report claiming that Western governments were trying to weaken the alliance between Minsk and Moscow and drive political change in Belarus against President Alexander Lukashenko. Now, these accusations from Russia are nothing new. But what was notable was that the Kremlin avoided directly naming the United States, pointing to a cautious approach from Moscow as it tries to not antagonize Washington while maintaining dialogue with President Donald Trump. And at the same time, the Trump administration created its own channel of engagement with Belarus. As you noted, at the center of that effort is U.S. envoy John Cole, whose diplomatic efforts have produced significant results, particularly on the humanitarian front. And as you noted, Belarus has released hundreds of political prisoners, including American and allied citizens, following a series of talks with the Trump administration from last year when this began. And this week, as you mentioned, historically, John Cole, the U.S., secured the release of another 250 people. The trade-off for Belarus has been sanctions relief and closer engagement with the U.S., such as being invited to Trump's Board of Peace. But this diplomatic line and growing engagement has raised concern inside the Kremlin, as Belarus remains one of Russia's closest, if not the closest, ally. So as the Kremlin watches closely, can the U.S. secure further diplomatic breakthroughs without provoking a response from Moscow? It is a delicate balancing act, but one where the Trump administration has seen significant and historic success. Greta?
Shelby Wilder, thank you. Coming up, suspected spies and executions. It sounds a lot like something out of an espionage novel, but these executions are happening right now. That when the record continues.
Biden-Harris demanded 80% of U.S. cars be electric by 2035. Now, find out about the lost jobs, environmental dangers, and why Detroit's unions fought back. Watch Revolt, the case against EV mandates.
1 in 4 taxpayers was a victim of identity theft.
Like me.
That's 1 in 4 hardworking, honest Americans who lost billions in refunds. During tax season, everyone is vulnerable.
We're not just tax-paying Americans.
We're fraud-paying Americans.
And we're not paying anymore.
With up to $3 million in coverage, LifeLock fixes identity theft guaranteed and gets your money back.
What if your GLP-1 for weight loss was as easy to take as a mint? Small, discreet, and easy. Think about that. No needles. This is compounded tirzepatide, a mint-flavored tablet designed to fit into your daily routine. You simply let it dissolve under your tongue. No mixing, filling, or storing your own syringes. Tirzepatide helps curb appetite and supports healthier eating by reducing cravings, including for sweets and carbs. And when your appetite feels under control, it can make it easier to eat less and move intentionally towards your weight loss goals. If weight loss has been on your mind, this may be the needle-free option you've been looking for. A simple daily tablet, as easy to take as a mint. Getting started is fast and surprisingly accessible. Just complete a quick online physician consultation. Here's how.
Save $50 with promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim. That's promo code SLIM at noneedles.com/slim.
Larry was in a really bad accident and broke his neck in the line of duty.
I get a phone call early one morning from the Tunnels Hours Foundation. Said, we're going to provide you and your family with a smart home. At that time, I just almost passed out. I just couldn't believe it.
They heard his story, which means someone's out there listening.
By giving $11 a month, you're joining us on our mission to do good. Go to T2T.org now.
I lost 110 pounds. You couldn't tell at all because of my excess skin. So Novella changed that.
Introducing the new Lift EX. For just one visit, total body transformation.
I decided to give Sonobello a try. You can see my waist.
Lift EX is our breakthrough 360-degree body lift alternative that sculpts, tightens, and lifts your stomach, waist, thighs, and backside. And Lift EX is exclusively available at Sonobello. Easy monthly plans make your best body more affordable than ever. Call to book your free consultation today.
Does it ever feel like society is going up in flames, yet people don't have the strength to care? There's a hidden reason for that, and it may surprise you. Testosterone levels in American men are at an historic low, and it's testosterone that gives men the energy to be men. Support your own natural testosterone production with Chalk. Go to chalk.com/TV1 for your $17.76 discount. Chalk's all-American customer service team is standing by.
If you still have bad breath by lunchtime, your mouthwash isn't working. Smart Mouth is the only mouthwash that prevents bad breath for 24 hours. This is the only mouthwash I recommend. Upgrade your mouthwash to Smart Mouth today and never have bad breath again.
Did Iranian spies just try to break into a nuclear facility? Yesterday, 2 people were arrested for trying to break into HM Naval Base Clyde, commonly known as Faslane Naval Base. It's in Scotland and is one of the UK's most important military installations. It has nuclear-powered attack submarines. Scottish police say they arrested a 34-year-old man and a 31-year-old woman. Some British media outlets are reporting they are suspected of being Iranian spies. Turning now to inside Iran, there is still an internet blackout, which means people in Iran have little or no idea what's going on outside Iran. And the Iranian regime will only allow the world to see what they want the world to see inside Iran. One thing that Iran wants the world to know is this. Yesterday, Iran hanged 3 young men. This is the video Iran released of the 3 men in court. It's unclear whether this video, when it was taken. What was their crime? Iran says the 3 men were waging war against God. Iran claims they killed 2 police officers during the protests earlier this year. Iran says the 3 men used knives and other weapons during the protests. One of the 3 men executed was Soleh Mohammadi. He was a wrestling champion. The regime publicly hanged them, obviously to terrify anyone who dare protest the regime. Human rights groups say they were not given a fair trial. Iranian journalist Mohammad Reza Mousavi joins me. Nice to see you, sir.
It's always a pleasure.
When was the last time you talked to people inside Iran, and what are you learning?
Well, as a matter of fact, Iranian people are celebrating Nowruz, or Persian New Year, today, and there was an opening of internet accesses today, so I could talk to some people on the ground. Well, people are frustrated with whatever that's going on. There is the sound of bombs every minute around the capital, Tehran. People are not happy with that, but they're also worried that as the Islamic Republic is surviving this epic fury operation, more people will be hanged, and more people will be actually avenged instead of foreign powers, because the Iranian authorities are not really able to take a serious measure against Israel and the United States, so they're avenging their own people.
The protests, the Iranian people this time and prior protests, they wanted the Americans to come in and help. You talk now about hearing all the bombs. Is there still an appetite for the United States helping? Is it still there? The same sort of the same sort of desire that they want America to help?
So the fact is that you have to separate. You have to talk about the Iranians, whether they're diasporas living abroad or they are living inside of the country. The diaspora are really happy, although they're experiencing
Those are people living outside.
Yeah, people who are not living inside. They are happy that the United States and Israel are taking action against the Islamic Republic. That's the way they're seeing it from outside. They're still happy, though they're experiencing some mixed feelings that casualties are, there are at least over 3,000 casualties from civilians, from what we know. But from everybody that I talk to from inside the country is experiencing, the trauma of continuous attacks. And for example, a friend of mine lost his aunt. I just learned that yesterday as a civilian casualty. This woman was just a teacher. People are experiencing that, but still there are some people who are happy.
Are these the same people who wanted the United States to help? Have they changed their mind? Because we heard so much about the protests and about 30,000 people being killed by the regime. Are these people now, they've said they've had enough, they want it to stop, or do they still want our help, or do they think that it's failed? Do you have any sort of sense of that?
So what I've realized is that those people who were also supporting the invasion or the operation or the assistance, whatever you like to call it, they didn't expect this to happen. They didn't expect this to continue this long. They thought that maybe by killing the supreme leader, the Islamic Republic would surrender to the will of the Americans. But it actually didn't happen. Now there are more attacks, there are more destruction around the country, and the same people who were hoping that the Americans would come and help the people out from the Islamic regime are kind of feeling the sharpness of the invasion.
Do you have any information whether Mohammad is alive or not, the new leader? Is he alive or not?
So we don't know. I've heard rumors that he lost a leg. But the fact is that there's no confirmation whether he's alive or not. We see messages coming out in his name, and
who's calling the shots? Who's making the decisions?
We don't know. Up until a couple of days ago, we thought Ali Larijani, the Secretary of the Supreme Council of National Security, was in charge. But now we don't really know.
Wow.
The main people have been already killed.
Sir, thank you very much for joining me. I hope you come back.
It's always a pleasure.
Thank you. Nice to talk to you. Coming up, a blunder by the French. Did they tip off one of their enemies? That when the record continues.
Nobody knows Corvettes like McMulkin Chevrolet, the world's largest Corvette dealer for 5 consecutive years. Set apart by its name alone, Corvette delivers a legacy of American craftsmanship, and a vehicle that sets the bar for performance cars deserves a buying experience that beats it. With hundreds of Corvettes in stock and ready for immediate delivery nationwide, it's no wonder Corvette enthusiasts from across the USA keep coming back to McMulkin Chevrolet.
Get new floors during Empire Today's gigantic 75% off sale. That's carpet, hardwood, tile, and vinyl. 75% off. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
There are only a few men I'd trust with my life. Two of them built this wallet. I've known the guys behind Proof for nearly 20 years, and we've been through hell and back together. When they told me they were building the wallet, I just said, bill me now, I'm in. This isn't some fashion piece. This isn't just some trend. These wallets are a direct reflection of the kind of men who built it. It's built to last, built to function, and designed to carry everything you need and more. If anything happens to it, they'll take care of it. No questions, no fine print. If you knew the guys who created this wallet, you wouldn't carry anything else. Go check them out, because they built this thing right.
Kevin Sorbo here, and I have an important message to share. The government needs more money, your money. If you owe the IRS back taxes, they can garnish your wages and levy your bank accounts. They can even seize your retirement or take your home. Don't let the IRS target you. Call the professionals at Tax Network USA. Their tax lawyers and enrolled agents are experts in powerful programs that may even help you eliminate your tax debt.
Call for a free consultation or visit tnusa.com.
When we started Allegiance, we were shocked to learn how many American flags are actually made overseas.
If there's one thing that deserves to be made here in America, it should start with the American flag.
At Allegiance, we do it differently. Flags 100% made in America by Americans with American materials.
Join our pledge to make the American flag truly American.
Visit showallegiance.com to get your high-quality American flag today. That's showallegiance.com.
Need blood pressure support? Total Beets contain a patented key ingredient clinically shown to deliver 2 times better blood pressure support. That's why Total Beets is the #1 best-selling beets brand in America. Take control of your health with Total Beets. Search Amazon now for Total Beets.
Pump up the volume. Go ahead. Crank the volume. We got you. USPS has increased daily package processing capacity by 46% in the past 5 years. And with USPS Ground Advantage, your packages stay in our secure network, dock to door, nationwide. For full visibility, near real-time tracking, affordable pricing, for peace of mind. USPS Ground Advantage.
Well, this is a blunder. An accidental leak of sensitive military information thanks to a jog? Here's what happened. According to the French news outlet Le Monde, a French sailor went for a little run on the warship Charles de Gaulle. What is wrong with a little exercise, right? Well, while the sailor was running on the ship, he decided to record his run, and that's where things got problematic. The sailor recorded his run using a smartwatch and an app called Strava. That's a popular fitness app that serves as both a fitness tracking and social networking platform. So while using this app to record his run, the sailor unintentionally revealed the exact location of the aircraft carrier he was jogging on. You can see his run right in the middle of the Mediterranean Ocean. So what happens now? According to Le Monde, the French military believes that the sailor violated digital security rules. The French military says appropriate measures will be taken. Whatever that means, right? Legendary action star and martial artist Chuck Norris has died. His family announcing his passing in a statement on his Instagram. They said Chuck was surrounded by his family and at peace. They also said they want to keep the circumstances of his death private. The family went on to say, quote, he was a devoted husband, a loving father and grandfather, an incredible brother in the heart of our family. He lived his life with faith, purpose, and an unwavering commitment to the people he loved, end quote. Yesterday, TMZ reported Norris was hospitalized after having a medical emergency in Hawaii. And just 10 days ago on his birthday, he posted his final Instagram post. It was this video of him sparring with a trainer. The caption read, quote, I don't age, I level up. Chuck Norris was 86 years old.
Champions trust Cosequin, the #1 vet-recommended retail joint health supplement brand.
Falls are the #1 cause of injury to senior citizens. Falling down stairs can be disastrous. Acorn Stair Lifts has the solution. Just don't fall. Sit, relax, ride with an Acorn stair lift, the world's leader in stair lifts. That's right, don't let limited mobility keep you from going up and down your stairs, even outside. Call Acorn Stair Lifts now for a free information kit and no obligation quote. Now you can safely ride with your Acorn stair lift.
Now I don't have to worry about him climbing those stairs anymore.
And our Acorn stair lift was very affordable. Our Acorn stair lift is definitely more affordable than moving.
The Acorn stair lift has a padded seat and backrest for maximum comfort. It easily folds up for access to the stairway. 5 safety sensors stop your Acorn stair lift if there is something in the way. And it even runs during power outages.
I am king of my castle again.
You'll be working directly with the world's leader in stair lifts. That's right, there's no middleman. Acorn's trained technicians professionally install your stair lift directly to the staircase. In most cases, in 2 hours or less. There's no need for special construction. We don't leave until you're completely comfortable using your Acorn stair lift.
Don't risk a serious fall going down the stairs.
I was really surprised at how little it cost.
Call for your free no-obligation information kit and quote from Acorn Stair Lifts. Just don't fall. Safely ride up and down your steps.
Give your life a lift with Acorn stair lifts.
Call 1-800-908-4077 right now for your free information kit or visit our website today. That number again is 1-800-908-4077. Call now.
You moved in. You nested.
Hey, what are you doing? Come here.
You partied. You cuddled. You made egg rolls. You slept in. Or tried to. And you kept growing. Now it's time for the next chapter. With Open Door, get an all-cash offer for your home in 24 hours. Because saying goodbye should be the hardest part. Move into your future with Open Door.
We're down here in Wimberley, Texas, to build a smart home for Dustin Weber.
We want to welcome the Weber family to Wimberley.
Yesterday was just amazing.
The thought that has been put into these smart homes, they've thought of everything that will make his life better.
This home allows me the freedom to experience my children, taking them to bed. This home allows me the freedom to not slip and fall in the bathroom. It is a life-changing experience.
Don't kibble your dog.
Hey, Dr. Marty.
Hey, back.
What's wrong with this?
Let's check it out. It's still kibble, which means they're ultra-processed. At Dr. Marty, we freeze-dry premium meats, fruits, and vegetables, and it's available at your local pet store.
Sponsored by Dr. Marty Nature's Blend, the health of fresh food with the convenience of kibble. Visit drmartypets.com/TV.
Well, it's just around the corner. This Monday, March 23, is National Puppy Day. Earlier, I spoke with veterinarian and pet food formulator, Dr. Marty Goldstein. Dr. Marty, nice to talk to you again.
Always great to be here. Always.
Well, it's a wonderful day. We're about to celebrate National Puppy Day, and who doesn't love a puppy, right?
Yeah, really.
So tell me, if you get a new puppy, you take the puppy to the vet, what are the questions you should ask the veterinarian?
Well, the most important thing, the old fundamental saying of health and happiness, it all begins with food. So you really need to discuss not so much scientifically appropriate diet, but biologically appropriate diet, what dogs are meant to eat. All the studies being done now on ultra-processed food in the human field applies to the animals too. That's the most important thing you want to discuss, food. And puppies do have a different nutritional requirement than adults because they need more nutrient-dense formulas. They're growing rapidly, their bones are growing, brain is developing, eyesight is developing, so they need higher protein, calories, and DHA, fatty acids.
How much should you feed a puppy? Because I got to tell you is that I've had dogs my whole life. They live longer than their shelf life. You know, they live 15 or 16 years, some of my big dogs. But I must admit that it's sort of like in my household, it's, you know, food on demand. You know, whereas I'm always sort of jealous of the people that they feed their dog once and everything's fine for the day. Mine is, you know, I'm not so disciplined. But tell me, how should you feed your dog?
Well, first of all, every dog is different. Every snowflake is different. So I don't like standardized. You could use a guideline on a package to start with, but if your dog is getting too heavy, losing their waistline, you're feeding too much. If they're too thin and their ribs are sticking out, then you got to feed them more. So it all depends on your individual dog and what their requirements are and what their metabolic functions are.
Well, I've got one dog who's 15. She's lovely, but she's unfortunately overweight, and she's got a lot of health problems, and she is on prednisone, a small amount, which makes her hungry. So I'm competing with, you know, on the one hand that this medicine makes her hungry, on the other hand, the poor animal shouldn't be eating. I've got an extra dog walker for her while I'm gone. I mean, I've tried everything. So you have any suggestions?
Well, first of all, prednisone is also going to have water retention. So she may look fatter than she is, and you'll blame it on the food, and it could just be from the prednisone. I mean, you know, I think we discussed this once before. Exercise is always key. And also feeding food that is not packed with a lot of carbohydrates, which just adds to obesity and weight gain. You know, that's why I develop my food carbohydrate free. It's, you know, biologically appropriate what they are meant to eat in nature.
Well, they do like your food. I mean, and oftentimes they've been so spoiled over the course of my life with my dogs. They like food for a while and then they don't. They still like your food, which I think is, you know, I tip my hat to your food because it still works in our household. All right, now turning to the issue of when should you get your dog spayed or neutered, your puppy?
That's a very, very great question because it used to be a knee-jerk reflex to spay and neuter at six months of age. Studies came out where you could start spaying them at 2 to 3 months of age. All the new science is showing that they should wait at least a year of age because spaying too early leads to joint problems, even immune suppression and development of cancer. So that's a very important topic to discuss with your veterinarian. And if your veterinarian is not up on this because it's kind of new science, then you should get looked up and discuss it with your veterinarian because early spay and neuter causes issues. Great question.
Well, our trick for housebreaking puppies is that we have 3 dogs in our house, and what we found is that the other dogs teach the puppy, you know, that the puppy goes out with the other dogs. That's the best way, you know, in our household to teach dogs to use the outdoors.
Absolutely. Socialization is a very important thing when you get a new puppy. You know, dog parks, if you have another dog, like you just said, great. And I do like professionals that do, you know, dog obedience and the different behavioral issues that come up. So you're starting fresh because puppies have an imprinting period where something that happens during puppy, you know, it gets imprinted for life. Good behavior is a great thing to imprint.
Well, it's a little late in our house, I'm afraid. Anyway, puppies. Anyway, Dr. Marty, thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
Yeah, happy springtime.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Stay with Newsmax.